President Trump holding a very congenial joint press conference with outgoing Prime Minister Theresa May in London. The president says he's optimistic about a trade deal with the UK that will be 2 to 3 times larger than what is currently in place. Joining us now is former special advisor to Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, Nile Gardiner. He is live in London. So now the president says the new trade deal is likely once Brexit is finished. Are you as optimistic as he is?
Yes, I am optimistic, even more so, I think, in some respects. And I think a U.S.-U.K. free trade deal is a distinct, realistic possibility for 2020, provided that Britain is able to leave the European Union on October 31st as scheduled. And that is really the most important element here, is for Britain to be able to leave the EU single market and also customs union, which enables the U.K. then to negotiate and sign free trade agreements. So there's tremendous momentum on both sides of the Atlantic. There's a lot of support for a US-UK free trade deal here in London right now. And I think that the stars are in alignment for such a deal. So, yes, I am optimistic, and it's tremendous that the President has been strongly advancing the idea of a free trade deal with the UK.
So, Niall, it's Carol Roth. In terms of doing a trade deal together, does this impact the ability for the UK to Brexit and exit the EU a little bit more cleanly, knowing that perhaps this lessens the burden of the economic impact of leaving?
Yes, hi, Carol. That's a great question. And I think certainly the possibility of a US-UK free trade deal will make the likelihood of a no-deal Brexit, I think, more of a certainty, because after all, Britain has to have a completely clean break with the EU in order to sign free trade agreements. That means that the UK has to leave the EU's customs union. Right now, according to the EU withdrawal agreement, Britain does not actually exit the EU customs union, and I think that that's a real problem for a US-UK free trade agreement. So, yes, I do think that the momentum for a free trade deal with the United States makes a no-deal Brexit on October 31st far more likely.
Yeah, Niall, so I was going to, at first, respectfully disagree that you were optimistic about the UK because of some of the hurdles you then mentioned. I was actually on the President Obama's Export Council, which was a bipartisan council, and as you know, we put together TPA, TPP, and TTIP, which was transatlantic. And there are so many hurdles for the UK to get through before there is a U.S.-UK free deal agreement. Like, I just think for our viewers, you know, first, you have to have a no Brexit exit, because if there's a deal with the EU, then there is no deal with the U.S. Number two, if that does happen, then the U.K. becomes part of the WTO, which means the impact on the UK with respect to new tariffs, new immigration policy, new tourism and travel policy is going to be incredible. I mean, I'm not for a no Brexit exit, but and then you're saying that then they're going to have a trade agreement which has to pass Congress before 2020. Right. I mean, I just don't see it.
Yeah, so my response is that actually, in fact, I have met with numerous members of Congress, actually, with regard to a US-UK free trade agreement. In fact, the Heritage Foundation put out the first proposal for a US-UK FTA back in 2014, 2 years ahead of the 2016 referendum. And I have to say that the vast majority of members of Congress who have taken an interest in this issue are supportive of a US-UK free trade agreement. Now, there are some Democrats, I would say a minority, who are skeptical about such a deal. Certainly on the Republican side, there is overwhelming support. I would expect a US-UK free trade agreement to go through the US Senate. And certainly, of course, you have a White House that is 100% in favor of this deal. Of course, the dynamics could change if there is a Democratic administration post-2020. But right now, I think with a Republican White House and Republican-controlled Senate as well, it's highly likely to go through. But I do think that if Britain does exit under World Trade Organization terms, Britain will do just fine. Already the British government has pledged to remove 95% of existing EU-imposed tariffs. So Britain will already immediately be, I think, a major free trade player on the international stage with the world's 5th largest economy. And already discussions have been held between the British government over 100 governments across the world with regard to potential free trade